All right, so let's look at what this course is, what tools you're going to use. So I'm going to share the presentation, which I'll be using to guide this recording. So this course is called Introduction to Android Development. You all know what Android is. It's an operating system, the most popular operating system in the world for smartphones. And this course, introduction course, is from your course outline. The objective of this course is this. The Google Android platform is one of the most widely used mobile architectures. Students are introduced to the Android architecture, development methodologies, and programming practices commonly used to create mobile applications on the Android platform. So this is what our focus is going to be. You will learn how Android architecture, as far as mobile applications programming goes, how that works. What are the different methodologies to develop apps? You will hear things like MVC and MVVM. Some of you may be familiar with those terms. For the others, it will happen as we go through the course. And what kind of programming practices, how to basically create mobile applications using the best practices. That's our goal. And along with all this, I will draw upon my 30 or so years of software development experience and share with you how you can do things that will make your life easy as you go down this journey, and also productive, and how you can create things that other people are going to enjoy using, how your coworkers are going to enjoy working in ways that you do. So next thing is introductions, the course, the teacher and the students. I already went through this in the other video, some of it. Spoke a bit about myself. I encourage you to watch that video. And if you need further encouragement, there is a nice story in that video that you can watch and hear. So we looked at what a mainframe computer looked like around 30 years ago, what a dumb terminal that would talk to the mainframe, and how today's smartphones have computing power that exceeds what was in this entire room. This picture apparently is from a NASA laboratory, so you can imagine if NASA was doing this and you carry more power, computing power in your pocket today. So we went through all this. And today, now, what our agenda is, we'll look at these two first items are done. We'll look at the development setup, what your development environment is going to look like. You're going to be using Android Studio, and I'm going to show you what that is. And we'll develop an app, your first app. That will be the next module. And finally, we will end this lecture in the last module where I will go over the syllabus, the textbook. There is no textbook actually, so that's easy. But reference material and how you're going to be evaluated and assessed. That is always a very important part of formal learning. We are required to evaluate you, and you have to undergo that. So we'll talk about how you can maximize your results, your outcome in that aspect. And finally, I'll speak a little bit about expectations, my expectations from you, and give you a chance to share your expectations from me in the course. So let's get started with setting up and exploring the IDE. So IDE, what is this? What are these three letters, IDE? So maybe some of you know it. That's good. And for those who don't know it, it's an IDE is an integrated development environment. And what is an integrated development environment? The one we are going to use for this course is called Android Studio. It's the preferred development environment for creating Android apps, native apps for Android. And it is available on various operating systems: Windows, Mac, Linux, even Chrome OS supports it. But in this program, I assume that all of you will be working on a Mac. That is the recommended hardware, because you have some courses where the software only works on a Mac. So Android Studio. So basically, let me go back to what an integrated development environment is. Now, in my introduction video, I talked about how you had different ways, different tools for editing or creating a file, typing in it, the code, and then you had to compile it, and then you had to run it. An integrated development environment brings all of that together. You've got a code editor, there is a toolbar button which you press, it compiles the whole thing and runs it for you. So all of this, because it's integrated, it's an IDE. And today's IDEs are actually very powerful. They even have other things integrated into them, such as documentation and source control. Many of you may already have heard of things like GitHub, where you can, use source control to manage your development process. So that is an IDE, and what we are using is Android Studio. If you already have it, it will look something like this when you start it. It will give you an option to start a new Android project, open an existing Android Studio project, etc., etc., etc. All these options will be there. If you don't have it, this is what you need to do. You need to install it. Search something like download Android Studio. And instead of giving a link, I'm asking you to search, because links can change. So just search, and then it will take you to the website on the Android platform, Google's platform, where you can choose the appropriate installer, in this case for Mac OS. And when you run the installer and then you open the Android Studio for the first time, additional components will be required to be installed. So Android Studio itself does not bring in a lot of things. For example, the Android APIs. API is application programming interface. So those APIs, for example, each version of Android exposes certain functionality that you can use. And usually it's backward compatible, meaning version 25 of Android will allow you to run code that was built for version 24, 23, and so on. But 25 may have things that are not available in 24 and before. So for those runtime environments, those are the kind of additional components the Android Studio installs. It will ask you, you can choose to install the latest one, and that should be enough. And during the installation, it will ask you what kind of installation you want, standard or custom. I recommend that you just go with standard, less thinking to do. You can always customize it later. And if you are already familiar with many things, you can choose custom and then choose different components. On top of that, Android has something called a device emulator. In iOS, the word used is simulator. It basically creates a virtual mobile phone on your computer. So your computer will have a little window that looks like a mobile phone, and whatever code apps you're developing, you can run in that emulator. So it will ask you to select something, with that supports the latest operating system. I'll show you what I have in a moment. So that's what this is. Let me show you what it looks like. This is my Android Studio, and I'm going to start it. So I haven't used it from this account for a while, so it's giving me some options. configuration of an older version of Android Studio. So I can just safely select and delete those and let it start up. I actually updated this yesterday from the administrator account on this computer. So this is all brand new. These are some older projects from different places that I have. So you can choose a recent project, or you can go with create new project, open an existing, etc. So this is what Android Studio is. The first screen. I'm just going to go through the process of, I want to quickly show you different aspects of this Android Studio. We'll see the whole process of creating a project in the next video, which is going to be your first app. Here, I just want to introduce you to the Android Studio. This is what it, whenever you open a project, this is what it gives you. It gives you a project navigator on the left, which it is loading right now, which will be like a folder listing, like you would see in Finder in Mac or in the File Explorer in Windows. On the right, because I've just updated to the latest version, mine is now 4.1. Let's look at that. Let me show you about Android Studio. I'm going to show you in this menu. It tells me I have this version 4.1.1. If you have this version or near enough, you should be fine. And this, what's new, go ahead and read it if you like. I'm going to just minimize it. That's not our focus right now. So this is what it does. It creates, whenever you create a new application, it gives you a Java file. This is your editor. It gives you an XML file for designing. Look at it later. And this toolbar is where you will be most of the time. So this is what you need to have. If you are able to do this much, you're all set for developing and following along. And here is a point that I want to stress, that these lectures are going to require you to basically follow along. It's a lot of hands-on work. So you'll watch the video, I'll ask you to do things. Sometimes I'll ask you to do things and give you some time. So take that time, do those things before you see how I did it. That way you will develop your own, your own skills. You will learn better. And ultimately, unless you follow along, unless you do things, watching these lectures will not give you the benefit that you should be getting. So that is what my admonishment to you is, to follow along. So this is where I'm going to pause this about Android Studio. Hopefully you're all set up by this point with Android Studio and ready to tackle the next module, which is, the next module is our first application. We're going to develop a hello world, as the custom is in programming, computer science. Anytime you write the learning, the first app you develop is called hello world. That's what we are going to do.